Welcome to the Beantown Podcast. It's your host, Quinn David Furness. The Beantown Podcast coming to you live from New York City, the Big Apple, the Queen of Queens, the King of Kings, as it's known. This is the Beantown Podcast, one of Baltimore City. And for this week, only New York City's top 500 podcasts, the People's Podcast, as it is affectionately known. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, rate wherever you're listening. You know where we're at. Follow us on Twitter at BeantownCast. Comments, concerns, grievances, you can let us know. Beantown Podcast, yahoo.com. That's Beantown, B-E-A-N-T podcast at yahoo.com. What's going on? How is everyone? Coming to you live from Manhattan, another name for New York City. A lot of the locals will call it that. Here for about 48 hours, visiting with my two brothers who have both been on the podcast, one recently, one not so recently. But this podcast is going to be all about brotherhood and, fraternities and sibling celebrity couples and stuff. And that's like if you're from Alabama, sibling celebrity couple. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. We're going to keep it pretty brief. The format is going to be just a lot of hard-hitting questions. Then we're going to hear from our sponsors, and we'll give you a little preview of what the next couple weeks are going to look like. And then we're going to wrap it up so we can do something that we all enjoy for the rest of the day, not just the youngest brother. But we've had a good time so far. We went to Brooklyn, the Barclays Center. Wanted to catch an Islanders game, but turns out people don't really go to those, so we didn't want to break with custom. Went to Smorgasbjorn, Borg, something like that, across the street. It was exciting. Everything cost about $50. So until that ad revenue starts rolling in, talking to you, Jack Links, or Home Pride, Oregon. Dad, been giving you free advertisements a couple weeks now. Haven't seen the revenue flow in yet, so we'll get our people on that. But then we went to Wall Street, saw Michael Douglas. Very exciting time. Was Shia LaBeouf, was he in that new remake from early 2000s? You have any insight into that answer, Walt?
Can't say I'm sure.
He's
it would be a guess.
really talking into the mic there. He's really made for podcasting. Let's look it up. Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps. I think that's what it was called. Now I'm having the problem over here where I'm so far from the Wi-Fi, but it's giving me kind of the halfway thing. And so you can't really search anything unless you turn the Wi-Fi off. So let's go ahead and do that. Money Never Sleeps. Anyways, we did Wall Street. We walked to One World Trade Center. It is Shia LaBeouf. Oh, man, looking dapper. And walked up the High Line, which I thought was a Mel Gibson movie, but something different. And walked to the library and didn't quite make it all the way up to Times Square, Rockefeller Center, but very close. And maybe the Islanders should start playing at Rockefeller Plaza because apparently nobody goes to their games at the Barclays Center. So, yeah, it was good. Got a New York slice. Have not seen Spike Lee yet, but we're going to keep looking. I haven't really seen any celebrities up to this point. So disappointing trip overall, but we're trying to stay in good spirits here. Let's go ahead. Let's get into it before we take up too much time. Making, his third podcast appearance, his second weekly installment, and he's been on one Beantown Unplugged special, The Roast of Quinn David Furness. Check it out now on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, SoundCloud, YouTube. You know where to find us. Walter Furness, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Quinn.
The mic is on, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, as long as the switch is flipped up, then we're going to be in good shape.
I had switched it off so you weren't picking up some of that cool background noise when Jack and Pierre were talking.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of like the ambience. I don't know if you ever listened. We did an episode live from Memphis. There were donuts. There was a river. There were people. It was a good time. But Walt, let's go ahead. Let's get you started off with a question here. Again, the theme of today's discussion is brothers. So, brothers on a hotel bed. Single from Death Cab for Cutie's 2005 album, Plans. Is it in your top 10 favorite Death Cab Cutie songs, yes or no?
I'll say yes.
What if we go live? Does that change how you feel?
You mean the live version of it?
Mm-hmm.
To my perhaps great shame, I don't think I've heard the live version of it.
Yeah. I've seen Death Cab for Cutie live, but I only got in for like the last 3 songs because I was seeing Skillet on the other stage before that, 2 very similar bands, and I think all I saw was "I Will Follow You Into the Dark," classic Ben Gibbard, and then they played something else. It might have been Crooked Teeth, and then of course they finished with Transatlanticism. It was right after what's his name, Chris Walla left the band, so. Not quite as good now as they used to be, but it's okay. It's still fun. Let's see. We're going to get our other brother in here at some point, but let's keep going with these questions. Oh, this is one I've been looking forward to talking to Walt about for like 2 hours since I thought of the question. Brothers, the 2009 film starring Tobey Maguire, Natalie Portman, and Jake Gyllenhaal. Are you surprised Tobey didn't get an Oscar nomination for this?
I'm surprised Tobey didn't get an Oscar nomination for Spider-Man 1.
Now, okay, we're going to go down a rabbit hole here because you're talking to the biggest Sam Raimi fan you've ever met. Spider-Man 1, 2, or 3, which one you like?
Oh, definitely 1.
Better than 2.
Yeah, I know that I've been called out on this before for not really appreciating the genius of Alfred Molina's Doc Ock. I think maybe upon subsequent watching, I might end up appreciating it more. But I don't know. There's just something magical about Norman Osborn.
Yeah, Willem Dafoe came close to getting his Oscar.
I'm a big Willem Dafoe fan. So
yeah, there's a lot of good quotes. I would say some of the best memes on Raimi memes on the subreddit come from Willem Dafoe quotes. Yeah, that's a good one. So you're not feeling any love for Topher Grace in Spider-Man 3?
In 3? No,
Yeah.
I thought 3 was the worst of the batch.
Now,
honestly.
how are you feeling? Topher Grace versus Tom Hardy as Venom. Where do you stand on that?
Is Tom Hardy Venom in one of the newer ones?
They made a Venom standalone movie this year.
Oh, man. See, I didn't even know that. Based on what I know about those 2 actors, I would definitely be in the Tom Hardy as Venom.
Wait till you see the movie. You might change your mind.
Oh, boy.
Didn't think Topher Grace could pull it off,
Could be so good.
Now he looks like he should have won an Oscar for that performance. Going back to this film, Brothers, a lot of our listeners might not have seen the movie, so just briefly describe to us the plot of the 2009 film Brothers.
Well, you've got these brothers, and then, well, of course, there's Natalie Portman, and then there's Philadelphia, often called the city of brotherly love, and I think there's a good liquor store called Brothers. There's also a crossroads in Oregon. I think it was a city at one point, or a town, I should say, but it's called Brothers. So yeah, Brothers.
Yeah, it's a very deep, emotionally tolling film, but one of the better films about the Iraq War. So everyone get the chance to check it out. I was a little disappointed Tobey didn't get an Oscar nom. I think he got a Golden Globe nomination, but those Golden Globes, if you get a Golden Globe nomination, does that really carry any weight? Because they got 25 different categories. I swear there's best third billed actor in a animated documentary series or something. It's pretty rough. Anybody can get nominated for a Golden Globe except for the Beantown podcast, which I want to maybe do a little call out to the Grammy Awards. The nominations came out last week or the week before. I don't know the specific parameters for, spoken word albums. But I'll say this, I'm tired of, Jimmy Carter and Obama and Bill Clinton and all those guys getting Grammy nominations, because literally all they have to do is show up. They're not writing the book. They're just famous because they happen to become president, and now they're getting Grammy nominations for it. So, yeah, we're a little salty. I would say the Beantown podcast just in general has been kind of stifled in year one. I know we were talking to Ryan Ligon and Kristen English, host of the Car Kind of Was podcast, a couple months back when the invites went out to PodCon, which is in Seattle next month, and absolutely no mention of the Car Kind of Was podcast or the Beantown podcast. So I actually wrote them a letter using kind of their online feedback form. They never even emailed back, so I don't know. It's all politics when it comes time to podcasting, but
here's the thing, though. Aren't you planning on doing a like Beantown year in review, best of year one, like in January here?
Yeah, coming up in a couple weeks.
Well, that seems like that's coming out, at prime time for, some of the award seasons, right? And they tend to like those best of type things. So maybe that'll be your ticket.
really thought either the roast of Quinn David Furness or when we brought on our political correspondent, Nick Albano, to talk politics, I thought one of those two episodes was really going to fly high, but I don't know. You just got to keep grinding. That's how LeBron James got to the NBA and stuff. He didn't let the haters detract from him. So, I don't know. Maybe I'll make it to the NBA one day. We'll see. Rest in peace, Ron Baker. He got cut from the Knicks this past week.
Oh. Poor guy. Is Jeremy Lin still in the NBA, by the way?
Maybe. I don't know. I can't say I've watched an NBA game yet this year.
Yeah.
There's not that much to watch when you're a Bulls fan. It's pretty ugly. So, yeah. Let's move on to another question here. The Brothers Grimm. Why do we say brothers before the Grimm? Well, you have any insights into that?
Do you mean as opposed to Grimm brothers?
Yeah, I mean, you hear about the Koch brothers and other brothers, but then you got the Brothers Grimm. What's going on?
I think it has to do with the way that it was maybe originally written in German. A lot of linguistic variety among the different enclaves in the Alps and in Bavaria and, parts of Austro-Hungary. So, yeah, we're going to say linguistics.
What would be some of your favorite Grimm fairy tales?
Ooh, well, most people's mind goes to Hansel and Gretel. But there's some darker ones out there, too, actually. I think Jack should be the one to weigh in on these because he had a volume of Brothers Grimm tales. And they take some wicked turns you're not expecting. There's a lot of like child beating, if I remember correctly, a lot of like children's body parts being eaten by different monsters. I think Stranger Things could maybe take a page out of this vintage stuff.
Stranger Things season 3 premiering this spring. Check it out on Netflix.
That'll be playing Stranger Things now.
$5, please.
SOS sponsorships.
I saw Millie Bobby Brown is in the second Godzilla movie, and I swear Millie Bobby Brown makes the exact same face in every sort of dramatic anything, whether it's a Stranger Things trailer or another trailer or Godzilla 2. It's always like there's some big catastrophic thing happening off behind the camera that you can't see, and she turns around and her short little like bob cut is floating in the wind a little bit, and she looks like she's about to throw up or something, and it's just, I don't know. She seems like a cool kid, but I'm kind of getting sick of the whole Millie Bobby Brown look here.
They'll probably tap her to play Danny in the remake of The Shining then.
Well, they're making Dr. Sleep here. You know that, with Ewan McGregor. Is
that another Marvel type thing?
No. It's a Stephen King book, the sequel to The Shining. and it follows Danny Torrance all grown up, but it's Ewan McGregor, so I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, I could get behind that. I didn't know I didn't know about that novel.
Yeah, I feel like they haven't made a really home run Stephen King movie in a while. I didn't see the new It. I think it got like solid reviews, but I don't think it was like I don't think in 50 years it's going to be considered better than the original, probably because of Tim Curry. But also, they made The Dark Tower into a movie, and as much as I like Idris Elba, it just really didn't do it for me. Even with Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey, you'd think that's going to be tough to mess up with a Stephen King book, but it didn't quite. I don't know. It wasn't very good. So I feel like when I think of Stephen King movies, I'm thinking The Shining, Carrie, The Green Mile, Misery, It, and I feel like most of those movies are like 80s, early 90s, and it's been solid 20, 25 years since we actually got a really, maybe I'm missing something from the 2000s, but seems like it's been a while since we got a good one, so I have high hopes. And Ewan McGregor is one of my favorite actors. If you ever see him in Angels and Demons, watch out. It's the only spoiler I'm going to say. I will say The Brothers Grimm, I'm a big fan of Rumpelstiltskin. I just like that name. And Rumpelstiltskin's kind of like a golem creature, and he's super sneaky, and he has fun with words. Thanks again to our holiday season correspondent, Megan Lundgren, for coming on last week. She doesn't remind me of Rumpelstiltskin, but we played around with words a little bit. Palindromes, do geese see God, all that good stuff. Wow, mom, Bob, dad.
Often overlooked.
Peep. That's a good one. We got a lot of questions here, so let's move on, and we're going to get Jack on pretty soon here so he can field some questions too. Walt, you're a big cinephile. You see at least one or two movies a year. The Brothers Grimsby, the 2016 film starring Sacha Baron Cohen. Why don't you think it did as well as the other Sacha Baron Cohen movies?
Probably because there's not enough Speedos or like,
Have you seen the poster for it? Oh boy, hang on. You keep talking, I'll show you.
Well, as someone who's not seen a lot of Sacha Baron Cohen, I just imagine from the title of this one that it's not quite as edgy as something like The Dictator or...
Oh, no. You are sorely mistaken, my friend.
Well, maybe it went too far finally. Maybe people said, no, we've had enough.
Walt's looking at the poster for the Brothers Grimsby.
Okay, so tell me, why is this the Brothers Grimsby? He's basically Dr. Spock with like a lab coat and then a Speedo that, in the parlance of Tobias Funke, does not effectively hide his thunder.
Well, I've never seen the movie, but he plays like a spy, and his brother, played by Mark Strong, who I always get confused with Stanley Tucci, by the way. It like plays a spy, but he's like really knows what he's doing and stuff. But back to your point of it maybe not being quite as out there or raunchy as some of the other Sacha Baron Cohen movies. The famous scene from The Brothers Grimsby, this would be a good time to say listener discretion is advised when you are listening to the Beantown podcast. Number one, we're about to get really gruesome here. Gruesome's not the best word, but it's going to be bad. You might want to skip ahead 1 minute. Number two, the podcast is objectively terrible, but the famous scene is Sacha Baron Cohen and Mark Strong, and they're in like their Serengeti or something, and they're getting chased by bad guys, and there's nothing around but elephants. So they find a female elephant, and they happen to climb up her lady parts to escape from the bad guys, and it's pretty vivid, pretty graphic. There's a famous clip from the Jimmy Kimmel show when this movie came out like 2.5 years ago, where they couldn't Sacha Baron Cohen was on, and they couldn't show the clip for obvious reasons. But what they did was they showed the audience the clip, and then they just had the cameras on the audience when they were playing the clip, and you like hear the sound effects and stuff, and it's a pretty fun like 2 minutes to watch. But yeah, I don't know. I think the humor was like pretty British, and it's probably in a similar vein to why people don't love the first season of The Office, which I always find to be fascinating because it's got episodes like basketball, which I think is like one of the most iconic Office things to happen. And what are other episodes? Dwight does healthcare and stuff, and the Diversity Day.
Yeah, Diversity Day is a good one.
And those are all like pulled from the British series.
Did you ever watch the British series?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ricky Gervais.
Yeah, I mean, I had seen a little bit, and then I think it was last winter, over the Christmas break, I went through and watched the whole 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And I found it enjoyable. I mean, unsurprisingly, it's sort of a different brand of humor, so you have to accept the sort of dryness, but there's some good parts. And it's not shocking, but it's really eye-opening just how much of the early American Office was borrowed extremely heavily from that.
Yeah, you even compare Steve Carell's version of Michael Scott in season 1 versus his version of Michael Scott in 2 through 7, and it's pretty shockingly different. He's like a total straight-up asshole in season 1, doesn't really have redeeming characteristics, and then they make him much more... there's some adjectives that could describe it perfectly.
Yeah,
they're not
lovable
coming to mind.
doofus or something.
Yeah, like kind of a lovable ignorance. But yeah, I feel you. We got one more question before we're going to do our halftime advertisement here. It's one I think you'll like. If the band Hanson was here right now, what would you say to those guys?
Where you been all my life? I mean, when you have a hit like the one they did, and then you just kind of follow that up with decades of silence. What is there to say? I think the silence says everything that needs to be said.
Yeah, they did a NPR Tiny Desk concert last year or the year before. That was pretty good. I don't know. Their new music is fine. It's just kind of they're kind of in this weird genre space where it's like the music itself is still solid, but I mean, obviously they made it big in whenever Mbop came out, which is like early 90s, I think.
Mid 90s, I don't know.
And it was all classic like tweens and teenage girls and stuff that doesn't, I don't know, maybe I'm incorrect in this. I feel like that just whole like culture doesn't exist a ton right now, at least. It did a couple years ago with like One Direction and Justin Bieber. I feel like right now, maybe outside of like Justin Timberlake, I don't know, maybe Bruno Mars, but both of those guys are pretty quiet right now. So, I don't know. They just got this music. Like, yeah, I would pay $5 to go see a Hanson concert, but I don't know. They're just kind of good for them because you listen to their interview on NPR and they're very much just like, we're just going to do what we want to do and make the music that feels right to us. Kind of like the Beantown podcast. One is more successful than the others, and I won't say which, but both are going to have a best of pretty soon here. So that's always exciting.
I think I did hear that Tiny Desk concert, and it wasn't bad. It was probably the first I had heard anything from them in a long time, but I that could be as much my fault as anything.
Yeah. All right, let's do a little advertising here, and then maybe we'll get Brother Jack in on this. We got a couple other questions that'd be fun to get to here, and we don't want to run too long. I'm already longer than I thought I was going to go. Here we go. Home Pride, Oregon. Are you tired of selling your house for less than a quarter of what it's worth? Excuse me. Wow. All because you couldn't find a reliable home inspector in time. Well, Oregon listeners, there's good news. Home Pride Inspection Services in Bend, Oregon is Central Oregon's hottest new home inspection provider with inspection services including things like heating and cooling, roofing, plumbing, and so much more. Home Pride Oregon is both contractor certified and home inspection certified, so you know you're getting the good stuff. If you're tired of big real estate stranglehold on the home inspection market and you want a safe, certified home inspector you can trust, Call Steve at 541-207-1101 or visit homeprideoregon.com. That's 541-207-1101 or visit homeprideoregon.com. Home Pride Oregon, inspection perfection. Once again, we're coming to you live from Manhattan, New York City, up around Morningside. Is that what it's called? Morningside Park?
Morningside Heights. Well, Morningside Park, but the neighborhood's Morningside Heights.
The general region. So if you're up here, come out, say hi. We'd love to have you. My name is Quinn David Furness. This is the Beantown podcast, the People's Podcast, one of Baltimore City, and for this week only New York City's top 500 podcasts. This episode is all about brothers and brotherly things. We've been joined by a good friend of the podcast. Speaking of which, don't forget to use hashtag friends of the podcast when you're tweeting about the Beantown podcast. But we've been joined by brother Walter Furness, who's making a reemergence on the podcast. Came on twice in late July, early August, had some fun there. And we are also now joined by brother Jack Furness, who is almost our guest in residence at this point. This is something like your 24th or 25th appearance on the Beantown podcast. No, I think it's 6 or 7. It's something like that. But Jack Furness, welcome to the podcast. How are you feeling today?
I feel great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I know you've been studying torts quite a bit lately, so any tips for making the perfect tort this holiday season?
Don't overwork it.
Don't overstudy it. I like that. All right, question for both of you guys, because this is something that you both, I think, like quite a bit. Kurt and Kyle Busch. Couldn't do it.
Couldn't even get through that one. Huh?
Both have less than stellar racing reputations. 50 years from now, which one will we still be talking about and why?
Is that the Bush of political fame or the big?
No, we have one of those questions coming up later. This is Busch, Busch, Kurt and Kyle. Well, the other ones, though.
No, I think he's trying to talk to us about beer.
I don't know what's going on.
So you got Kyle in the number 18 M&M's sponsor classic, sometimes Furniture Row.
Racers?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Kurt and Kyle, each one's won one championship. Yeah, Kyle's usually M&M's yellow car. Kurt, oftentimes, he's bounced around, but I think right now he's in the number 41 Furniture Row.
I'm going to go with M&M's.
So Kyle.
See, I thought you said Kurt was M&M's.
Kyle's M&M's.
Oh, okay,
Kurt bounces around
Kyle.
Sponsors. Last I saw, he was with Furniture Row Racing.
Yeah. See, I think it's got to be Kyle because my rationale was that in 50 years, no one's even going to be using the name Kurt anymore.
Maybe if there's like a Nazi reemergence or something. You go out to Charlottesville, Virginia, everybody's named Kurt. All right, the NASCAR question didn't get as much discussion as I thought. We could
talk about fictional NASCAR racers.
Yeah, later maybe. We asked, this is real, we asked this one to Uncle Andy a couple months back on the podcast. Who's more attractive, Jeff or Bo Bridges?
Is Bo a sibling?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm out.
I mean, Bo does mean, like, beautiful or handsome. But, you know, it would be pretty shallow to go just on looks alone. So, I think we got to go with Jeff.
So if you're looking from the within side, more of
From the within side.
a spiritual attractiveness, does that change how you feel at all?
I think Jeff Lebowski is, you know, we have a pretty, you know, sort of a kinship, if you will, and so I'm gonna stick with Jeff.
Now I'm gonna throw a little curveball in here. What if you introduce their dad, Lloyd Bridges?
Sure, you're not talking about Lloyd Braun?
No, it's a fictional character.
Lloyd Bridges. Which decade, Lloyd?
60s.
Did you say 60s?
It's when he looked the sexiest.
Okay.
I would know. I'm going through mine right now.
This would be a good time to shout out to our sponsor, Sexties. No, I think. I don't know. Jack, Lloyd Bridges is on the docket now.
Lloyd Bridges?
Yeah, like if you're an NFL GM, you're making your first round pick. He's number 18. Number 19 is where your pick's going. You think he might slide, but you're not sure all the way to the second round. Are you trading back because you think you can give him at 22, or what are you doing here?
I'd trade forward in that situation.
See, but yeah, I don't know.
I would get 2 guys with 1 pick. # Chad Pennington.
Or the Raiders trading away all their players this year. They're going to have about the entire first round draft in a couple of years at this rate.
It's going to be the John Gruden party.
Their average age on the team is going to be about 19 and a half. Here's one that you guys can definitely both weigh in on because we're back to the topic of NFL and football, and I like this one. Thought of this in the shower. If you woke up one day and found out you were coaching a team in the Super Bowl later that day, but your defensive coordinator was sick and you needed a replacement, would you pick up the phone and call Rex or Rob Ryan?
Why not both?
Because you only have salary for one. And you have to pay for their
Rex
meals,
Ryan
too.
was coach of the Jets for many years, right?
Yep, he and Sanchez went to 2 AFC championship games.
And who's Rob?
Rob has been defensive coordinator for a lot of different teams, Saints, Cowboys,
So
Browns.
you pick Rob because he's a defensive coordinator.
See, I got to disagree with you there. I go with Rex because Rob is very unscrupulous. I think we've all forgotten about Bountygate a little bit too soon here.
That wasn't Rob Ryan, though. That was Greg
He was
Williams.
the guy who deflated all those footballs in Philadelphia?
That's the wrong
That was
city.
when they poured Bounty all over the field and bubbles were everywhere.
What?
Yeah, that one lost me a little bit. See, you can't just say Rob Ryan because he's a defensive guy, because Rex Ryan was not only the head coach, but he was in charge of defensive play calling for the New York Jets.
Then what did their defensive coordinator do?
It's the same thing that like George Edwards does for the Vikings right now, because Mike Zimmer calls the defensive plays, but George Edwards is the defensive coordinator, so he handles other defensive duties.
Not a lot of information to go on.
I think there are animals in the wild that take a defensive duty to fight off prey and stuff.
We've strayed far from the brothers here.
Well, I've got another scenario here, including those two people. What if the stakes were the same, but instead it was a hot dog eating contest?
Rex is a big dude. I don't know what Rob looks like.
Oh, I got a picture for
I
you.
think their collective poundage is in like the quarter-ton range.
They can't ride the Six Flags rides together. They have to take alternate cars. Let's see, Rob, Ryan. We're almost to the end of our questions here, I promise.
Are we going to talk about New York, given that we're in, the big cheese, as you said?
Oh, I talked about it already a little bit. So that's Rob on the left, and that's Rex on the right.
Large and in charge.
Yamahama Fright Night. Yeah, I think Rob's trying to channel Jeffrey Lebowski, actually. I mean Jeff, not Jeffrey.
Bridges?
And,
He's got that long hair.
yeah, and I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That would be a close one. It
Is
would
that
come down
Derek
to the
Carr?
wire.
Who are they with in this picture?
I didn't look.
It's, I don't know. It's like Mark Sanchez's evil twin or something.
Speaking of Mark Sanchez, just got benched for Josh Johnson. That's definitely not Mark Sanchez. I don't know. Let's see. I don't know. We'll figure it out later. Okay.
I would avoid the Ryan brothers on the football pitch.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I remember when I would play my Madden whatever game, 07, with Sean Alexander on the cover. And you do a fantasy draft, but then you have a franchise. And I had one that went for like 9 or 10 seasons. And my quarterback was for the most part, Seneca Wallace, because he had really good scrambling ability. And then I went through a couple different running backs, Deuce McAllister, and there's this one guy who was like a third stringer for the Seahawks in real life, Michael Bennett was his name, something like that. But I'll have to look that up. But anyways, where I was going with this is at the end of the season you could fire your coordinators, and so I always had Dick Duran, I think, was one of my coordinators, and then I got who was the coach of the Jags for a while.
Mark Brunell is a quarterback. You're talking about Jack Del Rio?
There was someone else. Was he the coach of the? I don't know who I'm thinking of. It wasn't Del Rio. There was somebody else. He's either with the Saints or the Jags for a while. I'll have to look it up. But yeah, it was a powerhouse. Most seasons they didn't lose. That was pretty exciting. Yeah. Got a couple other questions here. This is one you both are informed on. Do you think there's ever a world in the future where Dave Franco becomes more well-known than his brother James? Or is it already here?
Depend on how James chooses to spend his time. I mean, last I checked, he's enrolled in like 3-degree programs.
You ever see him walking around Columbia, Jack? He teaches up here, doesn't he?
I thought he was doing some stuff at NYU. It's kind of what I was getting at yesterday, saying NYU's a more edgy place than Columbia. They have a good like film program and stuff like that. So that was my understanding, that he was doing all of his weird degrees and teaching at NYU.
I thought he was enrolled in a couple different places, and at the risk of going on a rant here, I gotta say, James Franco has gotta be the only guy in the history of the world, or at least in the 21st century, because, you know, back in the 19th, 18th century, the way that universities, degrees worked and stuff was a little bit different. But he's gotta be the only guy who is both like a student and a professor at so many different levels. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. He like blows the top off all the rules.
It's got to be really tough to date, you know. You're not sure if you can date a student, if you can date a professor, all that stuff. Hopkins just proposed a policy on dating between graduate students and, you know, whatever, faculty, staff. Like yesterday or 2 days ago, there's currently no policy in place, but now they're trying to, you know, limit who I can go out with and stuff. So I don't know. Might not be there for long.
To staff? Because you wouldn't fall into either of those.
Well, there's staff, and, you know, if you're direct supervisor or something, it's a comprehensive policy. All I'm saying is I want to be at a place where my dating abilities are not restricted by flirtatious policies and such. Superfluous.
What was that word again?
Superfluous.
So maybe you should come to Texas State University, the rising star of Texas. I'm pretty sure there's no formal policy in place there, and some of the faculty and grad students have been known to tangle a little bit.
Yeah, it's called God's country. That's what I'm talking about. Jack, you had mentioned this a little bit earlier. What went wrong for Jeb in 2016?
He's just kind of a turd. I don't know.
Just kind of sits there.
Yeah, he's like Buster Bluth. He's just kind of always hanging around, not doing anything. And then he tried to ride the wave, but it was hard because George Bush numero 2 was so unpopular at the end of his tenure, so he didn't have much going for him.
I don't know if the U.S. is ready for the trifecta yet. You know, we had H.W., we've had W. You got John Adams, John Quincy Adams. You got Andrew
Roosevelt,
Jackson and
both Kennedys.
Yeah, and
Both Kennedys? What are you talking about?
Both Johnsons.
Yeah, those Johnsons that are definitely related.
And Hillary tried. She wasn't a three-peater, but there's just
Why would Hillary be a three-peat?
I just said she wasn't.
But why would she if she made it? Why that would make her a two-peat?
The point is just that the Americans only have so much appetite for these, these dynasties, if you will. That's why we give first-round picks to, like, the Cleveland Browns because,
Tell that to the Warriors.
God knows the Warriors and the Patriots have won enough titles to last about 200 years. So,
yeah, fair enough.
But I don't know if you want to say more about it.
No,
Jeff,
that's my hot take. I don't have anything to add.
I think the first family that will achieve three-peat status, it's going to be a high bar. You might get it with like Barack and Malia and Bo Obama, maybe.
Oh, boy. It'd be a good screenplay, maybe. Bo Bridges, perhaps, but Bo Obama might be tough.
I don't know. Americans might be ready for a furry president.
Bo Obama, no problems. That takes me to the end of the questions I have. Do either of you guys have anything you want to plug while you're on live air in the Big Apple? I assume this is being broadcast somewhere by someone. Maybe Times Square, I don't know. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
Tell someone you love them today.
Heartwarming message, yeah, that's good. Sometimes you need to hear that when it's rainy and 40 degrees in the Big Apple. And,
yeah, we went for a run this morning and saw Michael Douglas, and it was really cold and windy and rainy, but no Spike Lee yet. So we're going to keep our eyes and our hearts open.
That's always good to remember. It's almost Christmas, and it was Hanukkah, so I'm sure there's some other holiday. When's Kwanzaa this year? We don't talk about that enough.
I don't know.
I think it's
a neighborhood to celebrate it in.
I think it's usually like a couple days after Christmas.
Okay, well, you should check it out. Well, next week, I don't want to steal your thunder, but you got some special episodes coming up. I'm sure you're going to talk about that, but maybe there's going to be some opportunities for getting some more music back on the podcast.
Maybe
throw my hat into the ring there. So maybe we'll get a little something. We'll see what Quinn wants to do. So stay tuned. That's my plug.
Well, there aren't any guitars in Texas, are there?
Yeah, I don't think there's any guitars in Texas, Quinn.
Don't you have a guitar?
Yeah, we can bring it.
We'll see. We might get back. We might do a Hanson cover or something. I think that could be pretty good. Yeah, Jane has been clamoring to get back on the podcast ever since the roast of Quinn David Furness. Of course, she comes on the one podcast, like the most popular one of all time. Yeah, so we'll see. I don't know. Just don't know if she has kind of that energy or spark that we are looking for on the Beantown podcast. But
oh, you mean white guys sitting around talking in a disaffected tone?
Sports.
Yeah, if you guys couldn't handle the Kurt and Kyle Busch question, I can't even imagine what Mom is going to say when I ask her if, Denny Hamlin's got anything left in the tank. Speaking of tanking the podcast, we'll see if Jane can come on the podcast next week. Anyways, I think that's pretty much what we've got going on for you today. We're going to wrap it up so we can do a couple of things out and about in the city before head back to Beantown. It wasn't me. So thanks to Brothers Walt and Jack Furness for coming on the podcast. Who knows what next week is going to hold. And then after that, we've announced this before, but reminding everyone that we're going to have a 24-hour Christmas Day live stream of me and just, everything. And maybe Michael Douglas. I don't know. We're going to be baking. We're going to be drinking. We're going to be whining in another sense about being alone on Christmas. Maybe get some Papa John's or something. There are no football games on Christmas Day, which is disappointing, so I'll just have to watch the Warriors or something.
Are there bowl games this year? Not even college football?
On Christmas? Yeah. I don't think so.
Oh,
that would kind of be sucky to force college kids to play on Christmas Day.
They used to do that.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll check it out. But got to go check the noon game inactives right now for fantasy football, and it's a big day. Playoffs are here, so... Thanks, everyone, for listening, and have a great week. And safe holiday travel. If you're looking for any TSA tips, last week our holiday season correspondent Megan gave some great tips on that stuff, so go check that out. And that's all we have for you. So thanks for tuning in. We'll come to you live from deep in the heart of Texas next week. Maybe we'll have Michael Douglas on. We'll talk to you later. Have a good one.